Before we have a look at the tool setter, let's understand what the problem is with conventional tool setting. So here we have a piece of 12mm plywood, and over here some 18mm MDF. Now these are sold as nominal thicknesses. Basically what it means is whatever measurement they told me it was in the shop, it won't be. So it's very unlikely this is actually 12mm thick. And if I get out my calipers and measure it, depending on where I go around and measure it from, it's going to give me different measurements. Plus, it's wood, it swells, so today it might measure this much and tomorrow it'll measure that much. There won't be much of a difference, but nonetheless, it's different. So, in the ideal world, my 12mm plywood would be 12mm thick. And I'm going to cut a shape out of my 12mm piece here. So I come along and I set my cutter down to the surface of my stock and say Z equals 0. Now I start machining my shape. The G-code is going to start from Z0 and it's going to work its way down. When it gets down to the spoil board here, it will be at a height of Z equals minus 12. At that point in time, the cutter will just be skimming the surface of the spoil board here, and my material will have been cut all the way through. Now this is not the ideal world. The reality is this could be 13mm, could be 11mm. So let's look at those scenarios. I set my cutter to the surface of the stock here, tell it you're at Z0, and my material is actually 13mm thick. Well, it's only going to cut 12mm into this here, it won't get all the way through. Now in the second scenario, my 12mm stock is actually 11mm thick. I again set the cutter to the surface of the stock here, say you're at Z0, I now cut 12mm down, I'm actually cutting a millimetre into my spoil board. The same applies to MDF. It also is a nominal thickness and it's roughly 18mm thick. Could be more, could be less. So depending on which it is, I'm either going to not cut all the way through it or I'm going to cut into the top of my spoil board. So to fix this problem, I do a workaround. If I'm cutting something and I need it accurately reference to the surface of the material, let's say I'm doing some V-carving, I want to set my cutter to the surface of my stock here and I'll V-carve into it, and that way my V-carving will look right. But when it comes time to cut all the way through the material here, I cheat. I know the G-code will say if I'm cutting through some 12mm stock, when the cut is complete, my cutter will be at Z equals minus 12. So instead of setting the cutter to the surface of the stock, I bring it down to my spoil board here and I say you are now at Z equals minus 12. So when it starts cutting the shape out, it will skim the surface of the material of the spoil board here and cut exactly through my stock. That means that my very first cut here will either be maybe fractionally deeper than it should be or fractionally shallower than it should be. It doesn't matter. What's important is when we cut through, it's correct with reference to the table here. Doesn't damage my table, but does manage to cut all the way through the stock.